First of all, why I've been involved in that is because I'm a member of the Cruise Line International Association as a destination with which we work a lot. And our first speaker this morning will be Mr. J. Cardinali, who works for Walt Disney. So, and I just told him, they are probably one of the only company that is not visiting the St. Lawrence yet, so I'm really happy to be beside him because I'll push him and hey, you have to bring your cruise ship in the St. Lawrence in the near future and taste our welcome policy.
Blueberry pie, I love blueberry pie.
He loves blueberry pie. So, Mr. Cardinali is currently the worldwide accessibility manager for Walt Disney Parks and Resorts. The accessibility team supports the Walt Disney Parks and Resorts segment by leading the world in services for people with disabilities and providing subject matter expertise relating to accessibility standards, guest and cast resources, disability service policies and procedures, assistive technology, disability community insights, and sign language services. Prior to joining the Walt Disney World Resort in 1988, Jay held management positions in the entertainment, cruise line, and sports and recreation industry. Just before I give you the microphone, I just want to remind you, I was on a cruise last year, and I was not on the Walt Disney cruise, but I still remember the. This is when they blow the horn of the ship. That's the note we hear. It's, in terms of marketing, you're doing a great job. Okay, so it's your turn. You have 15 minutes for you.
Okay, 15 minutes for me. So thank you. I'm here today representing the Cruise Line International Association. Bud Darr was originally scheduled to be here for this presentation. They sent it to me yesterday, so hopefully I can do it justice. But some of the world health issues going on, I'm sorry, start, there we go, have kept him in Washington. So I will do my best to represent CLIA. For a quick overview of accessibility when it comes to cruising, in the U.S., the Americans with Disabilities Act was signed into law in 1990. As everybody, I'm sure, in this group certainly knows, it's a wide-ranging civil rights legislation that prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities. And its basic non-discrimination tenet applies to any cruise ship embarking or debarking passengers in U.S. ports. But it's just one of the many regulations covering access for cruise lines. Others include EU 1177, covering passengers with disabilities and reduced mobility traveling by sea or inland waterway. The U.S. DOT regulations specifically covering transportation for individuals with disabilities on passenger vessels. The U.S. Access Board has some proposed regulations about vessel accessibility guidelines and design standards, and there are others around the world. There we go. Globally, CLIA members operate more than 150 ships, varying in size from just over 100 passengers to over 4,000 passengers. CLIA members work with a wide variety of stakeholders, including government agencies, disability organizations and advocacy groups, and feedback from passengers with disabilities to make ships and cruising experiences as accessible as possible. There we go. In the U.S., the CLIA Accessibility Working Group has been working with the U.S. Access Board on passenger vessel guidelines for more than 16 years. As consensus has been reached on many of these accessibility design standards, they've been adopted as industry practices even before they've been regulated, thus making modern cruise ships what we call access-friendly. Oh, there it is. Thank you. So a little bit about wheelchair-accessible cabins. It seems to be the most discussed policy and question when it comes to cruise line access. Accessible cabins are also an operational matter. Recently, under a CLIA contract, business research and economic advisors conducted analysis of the availability and utilization of wheelchair-accessible cabins. 2 data sets were collected from 14 CLIA member lines operating in North America. The first data set contained information regarding the number of accessible cabins available by ship between the years 2005 and 2013. The industry grew from 97 ships in 2005 to 113 in 2013. That information contained information such as year of construction, total number of guest rooms, and the number of accessible guest rooms available on those newly built ships. The second set of data contained the number of voyages with embarkation or debarkation calls at U.S. ports between July 2012 and June of 2013. It looked at cabin utilization by passengers using wheelchair on more than 3,900 voyages, accounting for 99% of the North American voyages of that time frame. What was discovered was that there was 88,212 wheelchair-accessible guest rooms available for passengers over that 12-month period, or about 1.91% of the total guest rooms available. The study also looked at the data over the years, both in a weighted and unweighted average, as ships, as you folks know, ships come in and out of the market. So it's total ships being built as well as those serving North American populations and those that had moved. And in either case, the share of accessible cabins has increased from just under 1.8% in 2005 to just over 1.9% in 2013. Some of the interesting data from the analysis of people using wheelchairs on those cruises was on a majority of the cruises, 80% or fewer of the passengers using a wheelchair purchased a wheelchair-accessible guest room. A lot of that is attributed to the fact that a lot of folks do not use a wheelchair, the features of an accessible stateroom during their normal day-to-day operations, but they use wheelchairs when they visit ports of call for distances and those kinds of things. In looking at the overall totals, over a 12-month period, there were 52,000 passengers who required the use of a wheelchair, or 0.5% of all passengers on these voyages. So, what does this tell us? It tells us that the current industry practice of increasing accessible cabins to 2% of our total stateroom population should be and will be sufficient to meet the current and projected needs of passengers using wheelchairs. But increasing to 2% of our wheelchair-accessible cabins is just one of the increases that's happened across the industry. There are more and more accessible tenders available to serve people using wheelchairs. Larger cruise ships have built side shell appendages that are lowered to serve tendering vessel platforms. However, being able to place a wheelchair aboard a tender vessel depends upon the sea state and the motion between the two vessels. But we realize cruising is not without its challenges. This is certainly true in many of the small remote ports and many that are not turnaround or major hubs for our cruise industry. There is also the challenge of ports with extreme tidal ranges. As the tide comes in, we can certainly add some gangways and some ports to help with that, but it certainly doesn't increase the fact that sometimes you're crawling up or you're traveling up 5-6 stories to reach the entrance of your ship. The most important element of any cruise is safety. So, no matter what they look like, ships are not buildings, and ships are not hotels. The safety systems are different, the safety response protocols are different, and the safety training is certainly different. Under the International Convention for Safety of Life at Sea and the standards of training, certification, and watchkeeping, every crew member has a job during an emergency that are specific for passenger assistance. Cruise ships have unique crew assignments to assist passengers. Assist teams are not there just to assign specifically to assist a person with a disability, but also to assist anyone who may be injured, whether they twisted an ankle walking up and down stairs, or experience anxiety attack, or have some other unexpected medical condition or problem during an emergency or any other incident while on board. Our passengers also have a role to play. As nice as our cruise ships are, they are not your home. You are responsible for somewhat of your own personal responsibility for knowing what your assembly station is and what your safety protocols should be. In the extremely unlikely event that an emergency alarm sounds, everyone is expected to go to your assigned assembly station. Emergency alarms are backed up by crew notifications, cabin and public space searches, and the appropriate crew assistance to make sure that everybody has a safe experience while on board. CLIA and its member cruise lines continue to evaluate all the services we provide for our passengers with disabilities and will continue to work with our destination partners in keeping with our goal to provide an even greater safe and accessible experience. And there's contact information for Bud Darr for Clea. And actually, that's all I have.
So thank you, Mr. Cardinali. We would like to, the way we will work this session this morning is we'll take some question after each of the presentations, since the subjects are quite similar, but there are several differences as well. So we're open to any questions about how it works within the cruise industry, if you're willing to ask us any question at this time. If not, we will go with the other. Yes, we have one in the back.
How do you handle your staff training at Disney in terms of awareness training?
Okay, so speaking specifically for Disney, we look at it it's almost a four-step process. When you join our company, you go through what we call traditions. It's our company heritage. It's our philosophy. And in there, we establish one of our core foundations is diversity and disability inclusion is a piece of that, as well as our other keys of safety, courtesy, show, and efficiency. So you get that foundation when you first become a Disney cast member. Your next step is, based upon your line of business, you will receive a specific line of business training that sets the core for what your role in the company will be. So if you're in food and beverage, you get disability etiquette and awareness training as part of a core curriculum, and then you get specific training for your food and beverage locations, food clocks, assisting people who may need assistance at table, that kind of stuff. And we do that for all the roles throughout the company, whether it's guest relations, attractions, crew members on board and what their roles are, whether it's food and beverage or youth activities or those kinds of things. And then fourth, you get specific on-the-job training. Okay, you know what the company philosophy is, you know what the overall etiquette and protocols are for your line of business. This is how it works specifically at this location. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
In your presentation,
Mm-hmm.
you focus a lot on people who use wheelchairs.
Mm-hmm.
In your presentation, you seem to focus a lot on people who use wheelchairs. What about other disabilities? People who walk with canes, mobility, sight, hearing, cognitive, what about those?
So, again, speaking in an industry, each line has their own protocols. I know most provide sign language interpretation, if those are questions. There are other services that are available specifically based upon the line protocols, and each does their own. There is not a clear industry standard specifically for Disney, which is the only one I can truly speak with. Again, sign language is available on cruises with advance notice. We do those kind of protocols. We have large print available for our guests, for our navigators. We will do some audio description in advance and some technology that will help enhance that. Assistive listening systems are available. Our youth program folks are trained specifically on how to assist people with some disabilities there to participate in our youth programs. So we will tailor it based upon, again, what our guest needs are. You're welcome.
Question? No? Okay. Maybe I have a question for you. I was surprised to listen that you were talking about in between 1% and 2% of staterooms that are...
Mm-hmm.
I thought this would be much more than that, because we're talking about the fact that the population is aging,
Mm-hmm.
and we did hear this morning but that by 2050 there will be 2 billion people at least that will, because... And we don't see in your plans any increase plan that much, so I'm surprised.
And I'm not the statistician expert, nor can I speak. What the study showed and what they revealed to us is when they did the study is, yes, we are seeing an increase of people using wheelchairs, but those are typically seems to be people with limited mobility who don't require the features of an accessible stateroom. They don't need a roll-in shower. They don't need grab bars at the toilets. They don't need those kinds of facilities. So they will book standard cabins because typically they're easier for them to use. They use their wheelchairs or their electric scooters or something for distance or stamina or going ashore and those kinds of things, but they don't use it in their personal stateroom. and that seems to be what the data is showing us.
And I know itinerary planning is really important. There are departments within the cruise lines that choose the destination. Will in the future destinations showing an opening for people with disabilities be a fact, be a plus in itinerary planning, or
It's always a plus.
Yeah.
Is it
already like that?
Well, again, we work a lot of cruise destinations. When we get to the destination, it's either locally controlled by the government or by the tour operators. They're all independent contractors. So, and a lot of those countries just don't have the resources or the determination to go the extra step. So it's certainly a factor. It is certainly something we look at when we look at tour events and the rest of it. What are your opportunities? It's certainly a question we ask with our tour operator providers. Tell us what your accommodation experience is. Tell us what you can do. Tell us what you can't do. Sometimes in a lot of the smaller Caribbean destinations, they don't have accessible buses or anything. They just don't have the facilities. And hopefully, again, conferences like this and working with destination partners to get that word out there and working with governments will change that culture, because we'll certainly use them if we can get them.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.